You wake up, something feels wrong. The usual sounds of traffic, neighbors, distant sirens, they're all gone. Complete silence. You check your phone, no signal. You turn on the TV, static. You walk outside, empty streets, empty cars, no people anywhere. Everyone is gone. Every single person on Earth has vanished except you. 7 billion people disappeared overnight, and you're the only one left. You are completely, utterly alone. So what do you do now? How do you survive? And more importantly, how long until you go insane? Where did everyone go? It doesn't matter. Your first thought is probably, what happened? Was it zombies? The rapture? Some massive surprise party where everyone's hiding and about to jump out? Did aliens abduct the entire human race except you? Was there a global evacuation to Mars that you somehow missed? For the purposes of this scenario, it doesn't really matter what happened to everyone else. The reality is the same regardless. You are now the last human being on planet Earth. 8 billion people are gone and you remain. You're alone in a world built for billions. The initial shock would be overwhelming. You'd probably spend the first day or two in denial, searching for other people. You'd check your neighborhood, drive to the city center, go to places that are always crowded, shopping malls, airports, stadiums, but you'd find them all empty, eerily, perfectly empty. Eventually the reality would sink in. You are alone, completely and permanently alone. And now you need to figure out how to survive in this empty world. The initial freedom, no rules, no limits. After the shock wears off, you might start to feel something unexpected, excitement. Think about it. No obligations, no rules, no laws, no one to judge you. No traffic, no lines, no crowds. You could do literally anything you want. Want to drive a Ferrari? Take one. Want to live in a mansion? Pick anyone you like. Want to eat ice cream for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Go ahead. Want to walk around naked? Nobody's stopping you. You could break into any store and take whatever you want. You could explore places that were previously restricted. Government buildings, celebrity homes, secret military installations. You could drive on the wrong side of the road at top speed. You could blow things up just for fun. No consequences. Kinda cool, right? Total freedom. The whole world is yours. Go nuts. But this fantasy of unlimited freedom would fade pretty quickly once you realize the harsh realities of actually surviving alone in a dead civilization. The fun stuff lasts maybe a few weeks before practical concerns take over. And those practical concerns would determine whether you live or die. Step 1. Enjoy exotic food while you can. Let's start with food because you'll need to eat and your diet is about to change dramatically. Step 1. Enjoy the good things while you can. Specifically, go for the exotic fruits first. If your mangoes, bananas, pineapples, and other tropical fruits are imported from overseas, which they probably are unless you live in a tropical region, chances are they'll be hard to come by very soon. With no one operating cargo ships or refrigerated transport, no one maintaining supply chains, and no one harvesting crops in distant countries, your supply of imported foods will quickly run out. The bananas sitting in your local supermarket right now are probably the last bananas you'll see for a very long time, maybe forever, so eat them while you can. Enjoy every last bite of fresh tropical fruit. Savor the mangoes, the papayas, the avocados, because once those are gone, you'll be stuck with whatever you can grow locally or whatever's been preserved in cans and jars. You'd also want to hit up restaurants and supermarkets for perishable gourmet foods, fancy cheeses, fresh seafood, expensive chocolates, fine wines. All of this stuff will spoil relatively quickly, so you might as well enjoy it while it's still good. Have yourself a few weeks of feasting on the best foods available before switching to survival mode. But pay attention to expiration dates. Food poisoning could kill you when there's no one around to help you if you get seriously ill. Step 2. The fuel problem. You might think that with no one around to stop you, you could go anywhere in the world. Steal a yacht and sail to tropical islands. Take a private jet to Paris. Drive a sports car across the country. The world is your playground, right? Not so fast. All those abandoned cars, boats, and planes you see sitting around will be essentially useless in about 2 years when their fuel goes stale. Gasoline and diesel fuel degrade over time. Even under ideal storage conditions, gasoline typically goes bad after about 6 months to a year. It can last up to 2 years with fuel stabilizers, but after that it becomes unusable. The fuel breaks down, becomes gummy and varnish-like, and can't combust properly in engines. So you'd have a limited window to do any long-distance traveling using existing vehicles and fuel. After that, you'd be walking or riding a bicycle. Maybe you could learn to ride a horse if you can find one and figure out how to train it. The lack of usable fuel would also affect your heating in winter if you're in a cold climate. No natural gas, no oil delivery, and eventually no gasoline for generators. You'd need to figure out wood-burning stoves or fireplaces for warmth. Guess you'll be sticking around in one relatively small area for the long term. But choosing where to settle is crucial. Step 3. Shelter in a dangerous world. If water, food, and shelter are your basic needs, shelter would initially be the easiest to come by. You'd literally have a world of homes and buildings to choose from. Want to live in a mansion? Go ahead. A penthouse? Sure. Buckingham Palace? It's yours. But be very careful where you decide to settle down permanently, because location matters enormously for your survival. Cities would quickly become dangerous places. Without proper maintenance, urban areas would start to fall apart surprisingly fast. Modern cities require constant human intervention to remain functional and safe. Without that maintenance, decay sets in rapidly. Nature's elements, rain, frost, heat cycles, ice, and snow, would take their toll on buildings. Water damage from leaking roofs and burst pipes would cause rot and mold to become widespread. These aren't just aesthetic problems. Toxic mold can make you seriously ill. Vegetation would aggressively crack through concrete and asphalt. Tree roots would break through building foundations. Vines would cover walls and eventually bring them down. Glass windows would shatter from thermal stress and wind. What looks solid now would become structurally unsound within just a few years. But even if you were able to fight back against nature's reclamation of the land, constantly repairing damage, clearing vegetation, maintaining one building in livable condition, all it would take is one bolt of lightning to start a citywide fire. And you can't call the fire department. Nobody's coming to help. A fire in an urban area with no firefighters to stop it would spread uncontrollably, potentially trapping you or destroying everything you've gathered. So cities are out. Run for the hills, literally. You'd be much better off choosing a home in a rural area or small town, somewhere with fewer buildings close together, less risk of uncontrollable fires, and easier access to natural resources. Step 4. Protection from predators. But even the countryside isn't entirely safe. You'd need to defend yourself against various threats, starting with animal predators. First of all, there are predators you'd need to defend against. Without humans around to control them, populations of wild dogs and feral cats would explode. Dogs would quickly revert to pack behavior, forming wild hunting packs. These could be genuinely dangerous, especially if you're alone and they're in a group. You'd also have to worry about bears, wolves, coyotes, and other natural predators that would become bolder without humans around to scare them off. Animals that normally avoid humans would lose that fear relatively quickly, within a generation or two at most. They'd start treating human spaces as their own territory. You'd need weapons for protection. Firearms would be your best bet initially, since there are plenty of guns and ammunition available in the abandoned world, at least in some countries. But ammunition would eventually run out and gunpowder degrades over time. So you'd need to learn more sustainable weapons like bows and spears for long-term protection. Step 5. The nuclear meltdown problem. But predators wouldn't be your biggest threat. In fact, you'd only have to worry about animals as long as you could still breathe, because there's a much bigger problem looming: nuclear power plants. There are more than 400 nuclear power plants scattered across the world. These plants require constant human supervision and active cooling systems to remain safe. They have automated safety systems designed to shut them down in emergencies, but those systems eventually fail without humans to maintain them. Once those automated safety systems began to malfunction, and they would within weeks or months, there would be meltdowns across the planet. Not all 400 plants would melt down, but enough would to create multiple disaster zones. These meltdowns would render many regions simply uninhabitable. Radioactive contamination would spread through air and water. Entire areas would become exclusion zones where you couldn't survive for long without suffering radiation sickness. So in addition to choosing a location that's not in a city and has access to resources, you'd also need to choose somewhere that's not downwind from any nuclear power plants. Your choices of safe habitation zones would be limited by this invisible threat. Step 6. Finding food for the long term. In terms of long-term food supply, you'd have two main strategies: scavenging the remnants of civilization or producing your own food. For scavenging, the city would actually be your best bet. Supermarkets and warehouses contain enough canned and frozen food to last you for decades. Canned goods can remain safe to eat for years past their printed expiration dates if stored properly. You could literally go your entire remaining life eating canned food that was already in stores on the day everyone disappeared. Frozen food would only last as long as the power stayed on, probably just a few days to a week at most. Once the electrical grid fails, everything in freezers would thaw and spoil, but dried and canned foods would remain available for your entire lifetime. In contrast, if you stayed in the countryside, crops and livestock would start to dwindle without proper care or protection from predators and pests. Farm animals would either die, escape, or be eaten by predators. Crops would fail without irrigation, fertilizer, and pest control. The agricultural system would collapse rapidly. If you wanted to produce your own food naturally rather than relying on scavenged supplies, you'd have to go back to the old ways. Hunting with a spear or bow would be necessary since ammunition is limited and would eventually run out. You'd need to learn which plants are edible and which are poisonous. Maybe you could grow your own vegetable garden, but that would require significant time and effort, and it would cut into your water resources, which brings us to the next critical challenge. Step 7. Water. Water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. Water is the most critical resource for survival. You can live weeks without food, but only days without water. And securing clean drinking water would be one of your biggest challenges in a world without humans. Without other humans operating infrastructure, you'd quickly be without electricity. Power plants require human supervision to operate. Even automated systems will fail without maintenance. The electrical grid would collapse within hours or days at most. Once the power goes out, water pumping stations and treatment works would shut down. The fresh water kept in reservoirs and water towers would go stagnant quite quickly without the chlorination and treatment that normally keeps it safe to drink. Within weeks, that water would be contaminated with bacteria and parasites. You could rely on bottled water initially. You'd probably have access to thousands or even tens of thousands of liters of bottled water from stores and warehouses. That could last you for years depending on your consumption rate. But eventually you'd have to learn how to purify your own water from natural sources. You'd need to find a clean stream or lake, collect rainwater, or dig a well. And you'd need to purify that water through boiling, filtration, or chemical treatment to make it safe to drink. This would be a daily task requiring constant attention and significant energy expenditure. Water would dominate much of your daily routine. Step 8. Start learning everything. You'd have to teach yourself a lot of things to survive effectively on your own. Basic medical care for when you get injured or sick, how to purify water, how to preserve food, how to hunt and trap animals, how to identify edible plants, how to maintain weapons, how to generate electricity on a small scale, how to keep warm in winter, how to stay cool in summer. The list goes on. But lucky for you, you'd have a lot of time on your hands. No job, no social obligations, no appointments, just survival and whatever you choose to do with your remaining time. And you'd have millions of books available to you with all the information you'd need. Libraries, bookstores, people's homes, they'd all be full of books on every subject imaginable. Survival guides, medical textbooks, agricultural manuals, engineering handbooks, all the accumulated knowledge of human civilization would still be there, waiting for you to learn from. So while it might be extremely difficult at first, lots of trial and error, lots of mistakes, maybe some close calls, you could eventually teach yourself enough to survive effectively on your own. Technically speaking, you could survive as the last human on Earth for decades. Maybe even live a relatively comfortable life if you planned well and chose your location wisely. But would you really want to? The loneliness factor. But here's the real question. Would you actually want to survive alone like this? Humans didn't evolve to be solitary. We're not tigers or bears that naturally live alone. We evolved together as highly social creatures specifically because cooperation improved our survival chances. We joined forces against hunger and harsh weather. We built families and communities to share resources, tell stories, empathize with each other, and keep each other happy and healthy. Our brains are literally wired for social connection. We have specialized neural circuits dedicated to understanding other people's emotions and intentions. Human contact has been scientifically proven to build trust, reduce stress, and improve both mental and physical health. Studies of prisoners in solitary confinement show that prolonged isolation causes severe psychological damage, hallucinations, anxiety, depression, cognitive decline, and even permanent brain changes. And those prisoners knew other humans still existed. They had hope of eventual contact with others. You wouldn't even have that. You'd know for certain that you were completely and permanently alone, that every other human was gone forever, that you'd never have another conversation with anyone for the rest of your life. The loneliness would be crushing. You'd probably start talking to yourself. Maybe you'd talk to mannequins or sports equipment, create imaginary friends to maintain some semblance of social interaction. You'd probably start going insane within months or years, even if you were physically healthy. So while you could technically survive as the last human on Earth, the psychological toll would be enormous. You might very well choose not to survive rather than face decades of complete isolation. Conclusion: we need each other. Being the last person on Earth might sound appealing in fantasy. All that freedom, all those resources, no annoying people. But the reality would be lonely, difficult, and ultimately unbearable for most people. Humans need other humans. We're social creatures by nature. We thrive in communities. We need connection, conversation, companionship, and cooperation. So while it's apt to cramp your style sometimes, other people with their needs and opinions and problems, be glad you're not alone. Be glad it's a crowded world. Be glad there are billions of other humans sharing this planet with you. We need each other more than you think, and being the last person on Earth would be a nightmare, not a dream. If you enjoyed this exploration of extreme isolation and survival, subscribe for more investigations into scenarios that test the limits of human endurance. Stay curious and appreciate the people around you.